Hello and welcome to the Made in New York Animation Project Mega Group. My name is Lyndon Sylvester and I will be your MC for today. This group is scheduled to run from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Before we begin, let's go over some information about this webinar. This group will operate in webinar format. Attendees will not be able to turn on their video or microphone during mega groups. You are counted in attendance as soon as you logged in. You do not need to follow up with us regarding attendance. If you lose connection, try to rejoin the webinar as soon as possible. You will still receive your incentive even if you get disconnected from the webinar. All right, let's begin. Today, we will be discussing the summer mega groups, sharing information about incentives, and introducing you to incredible guest speakers. But before we get into that, some of you may be brand new to TAP. Welcome. And for those of you that have been to a TAP group before, welcome back. Now we'll share a little bit of information about what TAP is and what we do. So the Animation Project, aka TAP, is a non-profit therapeutic workforce development program unlocking the professional and creative door for New York City young people with a drive and emerging animation talent. TAP develops New York City youth for the local animation industry through software training and prepares them with personal and professional development. At TAP, we offer many levels of programming. We just finished our spring programming, which included mega groups, creative engagement workshops, the Borough Storytelling Series, and the virtual intensive training internship. Congratulations to the TAP graduates who are pictured on this slide. TAP's programming is currently evolving to fit the needs of the community. To stay the most up-to-date about TAP's programming, check out our website, www.theanimationproject.org, and our social media accounts. You have registered for the Summer Mega Groups. Summer Mega Groups will run from 7:14 to 8:18. Mega Groups will be held on Wednesdays from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Every week, TAP will introduce you to a guest speaker from the animation industry. You will have the opportunity to ask some questions using the Q&A feature. We realize that today is the first summer mega group and you may have some questions. Let's go over what we plan to discuss in today's group. So today's goals. First, you'll know what TAP is. Then you will learn about the animation pipeline. You will know what creative arts therapy is and how it fits into TAP. You will understand how you will be paid. You will understand how attendance works. You will know how to contact TAP when you have questions. And then you will hear from an industry professional. And now it's my pleasure to introduce two TAP staff members, Brandon Pericon, an animator and lead rigger at TAP, and Natasha Amendalora, a drama therapist and workforce development manager at TAP. Natasha and Brandon, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So I think we need to have an opening ritual for today's group. So I am so excited to be here with all of you today. And in every single TAP group that we run, we engage in an opening ritual of some kind. So this really helps us enter into the space together as a group. And for today's opening ritual, we would like to know this. What is your favorite way to express yourself creatively? So we know we can express ourselves creatively in so many different ways, and we want to hear what is your unique way of expressing yourself creatively. So you'll see a link in the chat to answer this question. So please go directly to the link in the chat to answer. And when you get to the link, you'll see our opening question, and there'll be a space there to type your response. We're super excited to see all of the responses, and be sure to click on that link in the chat now. So we'll give everyone some time to think about it and respond. And after you submit your words, we will return here to this Zoom and we will watch our community's words come alive.
Can't wait to see these responses.
So excited.
Oh, we're getting some words.
So we're getting our answers coming in. These are amazing. So everyone, think about which ways you express yourselves creatively. Go ahead and enter that in the chat. They are coming to life as we speak.
Yeah, they are. Pretty fast.
So many great ones. Yes. So we've got drawing, absolutely, music, clothing. I love that. Expressing ourselves through what we wear.
I see photography, playing games.
I see painting. It moves so fast. Sewing and baking.
So cool. Through art and words, through typing through the chat, all of these things are such great ways to express ourselves creatively. Gaming, awesome. Sit and think. That's a great one.
Oh yeah.
I see through jewelry, speaking, poetry. So many.
Playing
Videography.
basketball, journalism, makeup.
Daydreaming.
Through baking, fashion.
Coding, illustrating, playing music. Absolutely amazing. Thank you all so much for adding your words to this opening ritual. So we can see how this community is so creative in so many different ways. This is fabulous. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. In addition to opening each tab group together, we also review the tab creed.
That's correct. So the TAP Creed, which you'll see on the screen right now, is a set of guidelines for how we show up to every TAP group and how we interact with one another in our group spaces. So let's go over the creed together. Lyndon, do you want to take number one?
Sure. Number one, we show respect. We are a team of individuals from different backgrounds and experiences with a shared interest in learning. We live up to the same expectations as we would in person. We mute ourselves when we are not speaking in order for all voices to be clearly heard.
Number two, we take care of our technology. We utilize our technology with care and professionalism in order to support the learning experiences of all who attend.
Number three, we focus. We have a lot to learn. All of our attention is focused on the group. We do our best to limit distractions around us, and we wear headphones if possible.
Number four, we participate, which you have all just done in our opening ritual. We are engaged in the group. We abide by the creed when asking questions and sharing our creative work.
Number five, we own the content. This is our group. This is our opportunity to learn more about the animation industry and express ourselves creatively.
And number six, we attend group. Our voices and ideas are valued. We attend each group we're registered for. We log into the group on time and we stay until the end. Our Zoom names match our registration names.
Thanks for reviewing the TAP Creed with us, everyone. Earlier in the session, I mentioned that TAP combines animation with creative arts therapy. Brandon, do you want to share a little bit about the animation pipeline with everyone?
Sure thing. So when making an animated film, we follow the production pipeline. The pipeline is a guideline for that helps the animators keep on task throughout each stage of the project. So we start off the animation pipeline with pre-production. In pre-production, we come up with ideas and flesh out those ideas in using storyboards. Storyboards are a compilation of essentially comic book panels depicting each part of the film. And this goes through several phases of revision until we get a nice concrete story. As this is going on, another team also works on design. This is for how we want the look of the film to be, how the style of the characters, the style of the environment around the characters, and just the overall tone of the film. After design, we move on into production. In production, we go into modeling, which is the process of taking our 2D drawings and designs and converting them over to 3D. So we create our characters, assets, environments. And once it's all created, we move on into texturing. Texturing is the process of assigning materials to each object in our scene. So this can be anything from the color of a shirt to the skin tone, the amount of reflectivity in an object. So if you're working with glass, or if your character is wearing a plastic badge, things like that. Once all that is done, we move on into rigging. Rigging is the process of creating a skeleton for your 3D characters. And this skeleton allows the characters to move realistically and allows them to be animated. Once our characters are rigged, it goes over to the animation team, where they spend some time either shooting reference for their animations or doing motion capture. This is just to bring life to our characters and to make sure everything looks fluid. Once animation is done, we move on into visual effects. Here we have on screen, we have a heart shattering. So visual effects can be anything in your film that is complex. So kind of like fire, smoke, explosions, sand, snow. Usually you can work in the same program, Maya, or we can move on into other programs such as Houdini or Flame. So after visual effects, we move on into lighting. Lighting is just the process of creating lights in your 3D scenes to recreate real world lighting or light sets that we would use in real life. And this also helps to set the tone for the film and the scenes that we're working in. Once lighting is done, we move on into rendering. Rendering is the process of saving out an image that you see on your screen and making sure there's all the added details that are necessary. So that can include the shadows, the reflectivity, the transparency of anything, the textures, colors, all that. All those images are saved for later use, and that's when we move on into compositing. In compositing, we take all of our saved rendered images and we put them all together to create the best and most beautiful pictures possible. We enhance each image further by taking our shadow image and using it to make our shadows darker, and just manipulating overall all the various aspects of each image. Once compositing is finished, we move on into output. That can include anything from adding sound effects, soundtrack, dialogue, credits, motion graphics, title, and credits. And that wraps up our pipeline.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's absolutely incredible how many phases of the animation pipeline there are. So hopefully that opened up some of your eyes in terms of just what goes into making an animation and what roles are available out there to be a part of that. And so at TAP, we not only use animation, but we also utilize creative arts therapy as a primary way that we work. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what creative arts therapy is. So creative arts therapy is a healthcare profession that uses the creative and expressive processes of art making to improve and enhance the psychological and social well-being of individuals of all ages. Because sometimes it's difficult to find the words to express how you might be feeling. And so sharing your story through creative expression can be healing in so many ways. And at TAP, all of our groups are co-led by not only an animator, but also a creative arts therapist. And the role of the creative arts therapist in the room is really to help provide that safe and supportive space to help our participants share their stories in the most meaningful ways possible. And our creative arts therapists utilize art, drama, movement, all different forms of art and creative expression to do this. And of course, we use 3D animation as a primary tool for our participants to ultimately share their story with the world.
Thank you so much, Natasha and Brandon. And now I'm happy to introduce TAP's Managing Director, Lori Parise.
Hi, thanks, Lyndon. Hi, everybody. So my job at TAP, one of my jobs at TAP, is to make sure that all of you get your gift cards. And so today I'm here to explain to you how you will get paid. So if you attended today, you'll receive a $10 prepaid Visa gift card. And that's going to be mailed at the address you provided when you registered. And you'll know it's the gift card because on the return address, you'll see the animation project, 413 West 14th Street, Suite 200, New York, New York, 10014. So your card can be used like a regular Visa card if you're, buying anything in a store. It can be used on Amazon, anywhere that accepts Visa. The only thing is that prepaid Visa gift cards are the only way that you're going to be able to get payment for this program. We don't offer any alternative payment methods. Also, the Visa card can't be used, that you're going to get can't be used to get cash out of the bank. So when will you get paid? So you're not going to get paid right after this session. You'll get paid for any groups you attend on the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th. Those by August 11th. Okay, so after the 28th, we're going to be stuffing all the envelopes and sending them out to you. And we think it'll take about until August 11th for you to get them. You'll be paid for the groups you attended on August 4th, 11th, and 18th by September 1st. So it's important that you know how to change your Zoom name. For attendance and payment, your Zoom name has to match the name you registered with. If you need to change your name for our registration records, you have to contact us via email. And here's a short little video that explains it.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura and I'm a creative arts therapist at the Animation Project. Today, I will be leading us through how to change your name on Zoom. So we'll start here on the website, zoom.us. Once you've signed in, you can go ahead and click over to my account. So we can see here that my name is iPhone, and I want to change it so that it's my actual name. So you go to the upper right, click Edit, and type in your name, and then hit Save Changes. To do this from the Zoom application is a very similar process. Go up here to your account, then click My Profile, and you do the same thing. Type in your name and hit Save. To rename yourself in a Zoom meeting, you would go down here and click Participants. You'd find your name on the list of participants. Hover over it, and More will appear as an option. Click More, click Rename, type in your name, click Rename again, and there you go. That's how you change your name on Zoom. Thanks for watching, everyone.
So in case you have any problems, like you don't get your card by the date that was on the slides and that I told you, or any other questions or concerns, you can email tapincentives@theanimationproject.org. It's really nice to have you all here, and I wish you a great rest of session. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for sharing that important information with us, Lori. Now it's my pleasure to welcome back Kat Goloski, TAP's Industry Outreach Advisor.
Hello there, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be back with you all as we kick off this summer programming. Today we have two very special guests from the world of Nickelodeon joining us here within this Zoom room space. We have Jeff Borkin, who is both a creative director and executive producer. And we also have Paulina Orozco, who is a coordinating producer. Jeff and Paulina work on the exceptional program known as Blaze and the Monster Machines. And it's an animated series that's known as the first TV show for preschoolers that focuses on science, technology, engineering, and math. Welcome, Paulina and Jeff.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you
all for having us. We're excited to be here.
The feeling is very, very mutual, and we're thrilled to have you both here with us. I'd love to defer to you both as we kick off this conversation, because we would love to have you highlight your roles within the world of animation and have you share your stories.
Sure. Jeff, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So I am one of the creators of Blaze and the Monster Machines, and sort of like creator, and then my title in the show is executive producer. Sometimes you hear like showrunner. That kind of means like I get to be the boss on the show, is an easier way to put it. And I've worked on a lot of animated shows over the years. My career has been sort of totally in preschool. So we're going to talk about making cartoons, but specifically, Paulina and I are kind of experts in the world of like making shows for like little kids, like 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and like what do they want from shows? Because they are very much their own audience. Is anyone that has like younger siblings or little cousins, like that like what you're into when you're 3 doesn't totally connect to what you're into when you're like 8 or 9. So we've this is kind of like our world we want to talk about, and like how do we make that kind of a show? For me, I started out on Blue's Clues way back when, and I was a writer on that. That was my first writing job. And then I was the head writer, kind of like the boss of the writing on Little Einsteins, and then Backyardigans, and then Team Umizoomi. And then eventually someone was silly enough to trust me with my own show, me and my partner Ellen, and we made Blaze. And now Blaze has been humming along for a lot of years. And somewhere during that journey, we were connected with Paulina, who started, correct me if I'm wrong, Paulina, as an intern on Blaze.
Yes.
And worked her way up through the ranks over the years, just blowing everyone away with how amazing she was, like how smart, how competent, how creative, all of the above things you're about to see in this presentation. And eventually she sort of moved up from being this sort of like this very junior person who was a not very well paid intern, and moved her way up to being like kind of the boss of lots and lots of things that happen on the show, and sort of the linchpin of things. So Paulina, I've taken a lot of your thunder, but that's my story and how my story transitions over to Paulina. Now say who you are, I'll shut up.
Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone. I wish I could see you all, but I can't, but I see some people. I'm Paulina. I'm a coordinating producer on Blaze and the Monster Machines. And as Jeff mentioned, I started off as an intern. But even before that, I had a few different internships and I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. At some point when I was in college, I was like, I'm going to be a horror director. Clearly, I pivoted somewhere along the lines. I ended up saying like, oh, whoa, children's media, this is kind of cool. And then got an internship with Tracy Paige Johnson, who made Blue's Clues with Jeff. And so when I interviewed to be an intern on Blazing the Monster Machines, I already had a connection there, which is great. As everyone will always tell you in this industry, networking, it works. And it is as important as everyone says it is. So I started as an intern and loved it because I got to dip my toes everywhere. And from intern, I was a PA, got to dip my toes everywhere as well. And then it was really when I was executive assistant when things started to shift for me. The executive assistant at the time left for a job in theater, which is great because it gave me the opportunity to get closer to Jeff and the other creator of Blazing the Monster Machines, Ellen, and kind of get a feel of like, what is their creative vision? Like, what are they, not just what do they want from the schedule, but because I was in every meeting, I was really able to pick up like, how do they make this show? And, you know, being the sponge that I took everything they said, locked it in my head, and eventually somewhere along the line, I started making notes for animation, and then they allowed me to do notes for animatics. And here we are, where I oversee basically everything that happens after the script until an episode is delivered. And so that's what we want to show you today. Everything from script, because Jeff, he knows everything when it comes to writing. He knows a lot of things, everything. He's saying no, but he does. And it's just, as Brendan said earlier, there's just so many possible roles in the animation pipeline that I never knew about when I first started. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, share this, and let's get into the animation process for a show like Blazing the Monster Machines.
All right, let's do it. By the way, I do want to echo something Paulina just said, which is just the importance of like networking. Like gosh, it really, like everyone will say that, but it's like, man, oh man, it is true. Like Paulina, I worked on Blue's Clues, and then like literally more than 10 years later, someone that I worked with on Blue's Clues emails me to say, I'm working with someone who I love, who's so good, who's so great, you need to meet her. And then someone who I think is great tells me she knows someone who's great. And then when like there's a job opening on the show, it's like, we should try that person that the person I already like thinks is great. Like, so these things, like, it's amazing how like, I think you'll probably find everyone's story in this business is a little bit similar in that way, that like someone did a good job for someone else and made friends with someone who went on to somewhere else, but they remembered them. And then when there was a thing, like, so Paulina, I totally forgot about that. Like, oh yeah, this is a great example of like you networking and just people knowing each other from having worked together, and who do you trust? And like, it just, because at the end of the day, like no matter what you do in this life, like you always want people around you trust. And when you have people you trust and they say, I trust this other person, you'll like them, that carries a lot of weight. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about making Blaze. As far as the breakdown of things, Paulina said that I know everything about writing. I do not know everything about writing, but I know probably a lot more than someone who's never done this job before. So I'm going to sort of talk about the development, like how you go from, how you make a story happen, and how do you like take just a blank page and turn that into a story, and then going to hand it over to Paulina, who's going to tell you how you have someone hand you a story, something on paper, and be like, now make this come to life and make it this thing on TV that people are going to watch with voices and all the rest of it and animation. So like, I'm going to sort of talk about how it gets going, and then Paulina is going to take over. So I kind of have like, when we talk about story, I sort of have three kind of general rules oh, look at that animation. Wow, look at, I sort of have 3 general rules of like how you make a great story, because the one thing I've learned over my years making TV is that the best story always wins. Like if you don't have a good story, it doesn't matter how awesome your characters look. It doesn't matter how great the animation is, how awesome the music is. Like there's all these other things, but if like the story's no good, like you're gonna lose interest. Doesn't matter how beautiful it is, like you're gonna lose interest. So you have to have like, you have to know how to tell a good story. Number 2, you have to know your audience. Paulina and I are making a show for little kids. Like we know there are kids as young as 2 that are watching Blaze and the Monster Machines. So it doesn't make sense for us to like put things in there that are too scary or too complicated. Like if we do that stuff, a 2-year-old is going to watch the show, or a 3-year-old, and they're going to be like, I don't get what's happening. And they're going to change the channel. Like kids are on tablets. Like they can just like whoop, swipe over to the next thing and like, I'm on the next show. So like, you better know who's watching and what they can handle and what they want, so that you're working within those parameters. And my 3rd lesson I want to just put out there is that change is good. A lot of people, the mistake they make when they're coming up with stories is they have a story, they know how they want it to end, and they're like, boop, I've written it, it's done, and it's going forward. And like the reality is, like people who do this for a living, like never do that. Like we are always scrutinizing what we've done. So like you come up with something, you put it in a drawer, you look at it again, decide, do I still like that 2 days later? You change it, you try it some more, you show it to people, you have other people weigh in, you decide what, like you're just always changing it and changing it and changing it and looking at it again and be like, do I like this? Do I like this? Do I? You're always having to like ask those questions of what you're doing. And usually the result is you have something that's changing little by little, or sometimes like in a big way over time. And you don't want to be afraid of that, because a lot of people, like they put the work in the first time. And I still work with people like this. They'll do it and they'll be like, I'm not changing it. It's good. I did it. It's done. And it's like, you have to like, no, let's look at it again. Let's look at it again. So like have a very open mind about like looking at your own work and stepping away from it and coming back to it and be like, but do I like this? Is it good? And that is sort of these are sort of like the foundational principles of making Blaze. Like tell the best stories, know your audience, and be ready to change some of it or all of it at any point in time if you think it would make it better. So I guess moving to the next picture. Okay, so these are the stages of the writing process. When you're working on a show, or even if you're not working on a show, these are sort of like the general stages that we follow. And I will say this, Blaze does not totally follow the process that like every show does it differently. Every show, the creators, whoever's in charge are like, I want to do it like this. So you'll go from one show to the next if you're, and you're like, oh, on my old show, we did it like that. And just like, there's sort of no rules, but the general structure tends to be something like this, which is start with a premise. Premise being just a general idea, like the gist of the story. Oh, you've already moved on to the premise. All right, we can do that. We're gonna look at premise, then we're gonna develop the premise and fill in ideas to turn into an outline and sort of build out the idea of a story into a full story. Then something that we do on Blaze that kind of no other show does, which makes us really different, is we do research. We actually take our story and we show it to 3-year-olds. And we let them watch it and we watch them watch it and be like, are they liking this or do they hate this? And if they're hating it, like, what are they hating? And what are the parts they're excited? So then we see how they're reacting to it. Then we decide how much we want to change, a lot of it, some of it, and then we write a script. So with that being like the stages we're going to talk about, let's look at a premise. Paulina and I picked an episode kind of at random. We picked episode 606, season 6, episode 6, Blaze and Sparkle's Adventure, placeholder title. And you can see this from October 1st, 2019. And this was just something we wrote up to be like, this is kind of the gist of the story. Blaze and AJ are on their way to the Monster Dome for a big TBD race featuring a massive mind-bending racetrack named the TBD track. TBD stands for those that don't know, to be decided. just to give you a sense of, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that we haven't figured out yet. Without reading the whole thing, the idea of this story is, what if Blaze, we are introducing a new character on the show, Blaze's younger sister, Sparkle. What if Sparkle is like always wanted to be a racer, and this is her first chance to like be in a race, and she's going to race with her big brother. So that's the idea of the story. And actually in the story, there's like a little bit of a barrier to entry where like, to be in the race, you need to have this special racing badge with stars on it. And if you earn 4 stars, you're allowed in the race. But Sparkle's new. She can't be in the race. She doesn't have any stars. But over the course of the episode, Blaze and Sparkle, they go on this adventure together where actually what happens is the bad guy, quote unquote, bad guy Crusher, decides to cheat and send Blaze away. And Sparkle's like, I'll save you, big brother. And she goes away with him. And then they don't give up and like, we're going to make it back to the big racetrack in time for the race. And when you know it, along the way, Sparkle's going to do really brave things along with Blaze. And every time she does, her little racing badge gets another star. And oh my gosh, so that by the end of the story, when you make it back to the race, wouldn't you know it, they get back to the race. And now Sparkle has all of her stars. She's allowed to race. And Blaze and Sparkle, spoiler alert, they win the race. That's the story that we came up with for the episode. But there was a lot of that we hadn't figured out yet. But that is the premise. Just like, here's the general idea of what we're going to go for. Then you take the premise, you start to fill in all the ideas. Like, all right, well, we know how we kind of want it to begin and end. What's the middle? Like, what do Blaze and Sparkle do that earns Sparkle all these badges? Something we do on Blaze, Blaze was mentioned earlier. Blaze is a curriculum show, which we have we go for STEM is the curriculum on this show, which is really challenging for little kids. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And we will do episodes that are like, let's make sure the whole adventure, like getting back Blaze and Sparkle back to the race. In this episode, we started with the idea of like propulsion. What if propulsion is the curriculum? That's like a pretty sophisticated concept that I didn't know anything about when we started. And so we're looking up, we're Googling, we talk to science consultants, talk to propulsion, and like figuring out, could we do a whole story where that's the whole thing. We make it so that Blaze and Sparkle, they're the heroes. If you know about propulsion, you can get over any challenge. So the first like game in the story, which in Blaze is like, as they're on their way back to the Monster Dome for the big race, oh my God, there's a huge problem. And they're never going to overcome it unless we know about propulsion and we use it to our advantage. So we put the science into the story. Like the story has to be good. We have to have that compelling story. We don't make the whole story about propulsion. We're like, let's make it an awesome story about the siblings trying to get back to the race. But then along the way, there's this like, oh no moment. But if you know the science, you can get over it. So in this case, the idea we came up with, and you'll see all these like numbers, 29, 30, 31, we break down like beat by beat by beat of the story, what should happen leading to. So the idea for this is Blaze, we cut in as Blaze and Sparkle come racing up to a large body of water. It's too far to cross, but not far from shore, they spot a small island. Unfortunately, it's too far away. They can't reach it. Just then, 3 big whales surface between them and the island. As the whales surface, they blast a mix of water and air out of their blowholes, giving Blaze an idea. Look, 3 whales. If we pick the right one, I bet it could blast us to that island. Oh yeah, with the air, water from the whales' blowholes, we can use propulsion to launch themselves to the island. So we just came up with this crazy scenario of like, sure, why not? Let's have a couple monster trucks ride the blowholes of whales to blast us to islands across a giant lake. That is insanity to any normal person, but this is the fun of a preschool cartoon. It's like, why not? Like, whatever you can come up with is a fun way to introduce propulsion to a 3-year-old. So like, okay. So we tried like whales blasting them from their blowholes. Now, going from this, we came up with the whole story in an outline. And then, Paulina, if we move to the next slide, we move into research. We've got the whole story. And now it's like, hey, aren't we smart? We got a story. Let's show real kids. And if there's one thing to know about like 3-year-olds, they're not necessarily going to lie to you about whether or not they like a story. You can show a 3-year-old a story, and if they don't like it, they will just say in the middle of your story, I don't like this. Or like, we now do them over Zoom. So we just show kids, like they'll be in their room watching on like an iPad or something. And just in the middle of the story, they'll just drop the iPad and be like, Mom, I want a snack. I hate this. And you're like, oh, okay, good. Well, we know they don't like this. So you can see we took that moment with the whales and we turned it into this like kind of like interactive picture book. You'll see like it goes from left to right, back and forth, like panel 11, they're at the water and there's whales. And then panel 12, slide A, we're like, hey, we could use their blowholes. Slide B, we do a like, hey kids, if we jumped on the back of the red whale, it would launch us here. If you jump on the back of the green whale, slide C, it'll launch us here. And slide D, if we want to jump on the back of the yellow whale, it'll launch us here. And then slide E, you're seeing all those sort of blast potential paths and saying which one will get you to that little yellow hump of an island. The red whale, yeah. So then the red whale blasts out a spray of water and air and they ride it to the island. Now, we showed that to kids, they liked it, but they didn't love it. And one of the things we learned was that they didn't really understand the idea of propulsion. They were like that. So the propulsion is about how much force pushes you in the air. It was kind of hard for a 3-year-old to be like, what are you talking about? So we changed the concept and we're like, let's just change it. And we tried instead trajectory, which I realize these are sort of big ideas, but again, I don't know much about trajectory, but trajectory is like the path something follows when it's moving through the air, which fit better with like, that dotted line, like that's a trajectory. And that fit better in kids, like, so we made that change as something that was like easier from the grasp. We saw what they did. We taught a big conversation about what should we change, like me, Paulina, and some others. And then you take those ideas and you move into the script. And then, yes, scripting, yep, we're there. And then like, here's just, we took this moment and I'm gonna look at page 8, the top of page 8. Artist note, please reference the storybook for whale placement and spout trajectory. Why don't we ask them for help? Oh gosh, I have to do a whale voice. Oh, gaskets, those are whales. And check out how they blast air out of their blowholes. A blast like that could launch us across the water. Yeah, we just need the right trajectory. A trajectory is the path something follows when it moves through the air, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, we took that premise, we turned it into that outline, we worked through, we took a lot of like, kind of like this. Then we filled in all the ideas. We showed it to kids. We asked our audience, do you like this? They told us yes and no. And then we took the areas where they said no, and we're like, let's fix that. And then we took all that into script. And when we do a script, we usually do like 3 or 4 drafts. Like we write it, we read it, all the writers and everybody tell each other what part was slow, what was working. We make changes, we rewrite it, we do it again, we rewrite it. We just keep changing and asking ourselves, do we like this? Do we like this? Until finally we have a script they call the polished script, where we're like, I think we got it. I think we got the script. And then it moves over into Paulina's territory, where we're like, take this script and now make it a TV show. Paulina?
Yeah. And then I take it from here. I say, all right, Jeff, we got it. And that's when you get into the storyboards and radio play. These are 2 parts of the production line that happen kind of on a parallel track. So as our artists start drawing the episode, our voice artists will start recording it. But first we'll talk about the storyboards. We start off really basic. You want the key moments in a storyboard to tell the story, but obviously we're not fully animating yet. So you have to determine which moments in the script are the ones that you want to draw out to show the intention of the story, to show the emotion, but not overkill and do too much to where you're animating, because that just takes a very long time. And in our team, we're so lucky to have a proxy 3D animator who comes in at the storyboard phase and helps us work out moments that we know are going to be hard to translate into 3D, Our show is 3D, boards are 2D. And so you're really working with very, very different worlds. There's a lot you could cheat in 2D that you can't in 3D. And so if you look at line 61 and 62, you'll see a version of what our proxy animator does to help us get into a physical space to see how that works. All the other storyboard, the rest of the storyboards are your traditional 2D, and sometimes they're a little more detailed, sometimes they're not. And as of right now, we still move forward with trajectory. And I will say, if you take a look at this proxy that we did, keep it in mind. You'll see it changes a lot. And that's what's great about having such a long process, is you really get to develop how something works, especially for an audience this young, who, you know, they need to see things in a very, very different way, as Jeff said earlier. They're not like you and me where they could fill in holes. They take things very literally. We'll talk more about that afterwards. So we have a few board artists. They're boarding out the entire script. And then meanwhile, after our VO artists have recorded, we send this to our dialogue editor, our radio play editor, really. And they put together a radio play. And so I wanted to show you kind of like how nuanced of things we're listening to with different takes. You know, an artist goes in and they don't just go through the script once and say, see you later. They, you know, sometimes they do a line, a little like this, a little like that. We play around in the recording room, and then we decide like, okay, what is going to make it into the episode? So first, I'm gonna play you a sparkle, a line from our sparkle actor. I hope you could hear this.
Yay! I can't wait to get back to the big race and woohoo!
So that one, if you hear, she stumbled a little. She kind of thought through the line. So not her strongest.
Yay! I can't wait to get back to that big race and whoa!
And in this one, same thing. At the beginning, she's really thinking through the line. Towards the end, she finished strong, but the beginning was still a little thoughtful.
That's a lot of water.
Oh my gosh.
I wonder how we're...
AJ just wants to say his line. This is what we ultimately went with.
Yay! I can't wait to get back to the big race and whoa!
So that tighter, you could tell she knew the line, she felt the line. It was really strong. So we go through this for every character. So let's hear AJ's line, even though he wanted to play earlier.
Uh-oh, that's a lot of water. I wonder how we're gonna get across.
Does it really sound like a problem, AJ? I'm not sure.
Uh-oh, that's a lot of water. I wonder how we're gonna get across.
So here, the first part, now that sounds like a problem. But the second part, it's kind of like he was playing a detective, where that's not the moment. The moment we're trying to sell is like, we really need to think about what we're gonna do. A lot of determination to keep the kids engaged and wanting to play the game that is coming up. So this is what we ultimately went with.
Uh-oh, that's a lot of water. I wonder how we're gonna get across.
So his tone there was pretty consistent throughout. You could, from how he performed it, you could tell like, this is a problem. And there was some determination, but not like, he wasn't thinking it through too much. We wanted to get to the game. And so once we've done that for every single character, for every single line, we then go to, oh no. Uh-oh.
That's a lot of water.
I knew I was gonna click the
That's
wrong button. That's what your mind sounds like when you're in an audio edit room. You just hear all the voices at once. Anyways, so once you put that all together, your storyboards and your radio play are going to create the animatic, which is just basically a very, very basic animated not animated, just you string together all of your pictures, you put in all of your sound, you time it out so it has a good pace, so you feel good. Add some music to give it a little tone, and add sound effects to give it a little more oomph. So I'm going to show you guys what our locked animatic for this game looked like. And I will say, for this particular episode, it was when we started the pandemic. So we actually did not get the actors in till much later. So you're going to hear a lot of our crew's voices in this scene.
Yay! I can't wait to get back to the big race and whoa!
Uh-oh, that's a lot of water. I wonder how we're gonna get across.
Ooh, I have an idea. Why don't we ask them for help?
Gaskets! Those are whales!
And check out how they blast air out of their blowholes. A blast like that could launch us across the water.
Yeah, we just need to launch ourselves with the right trajectory.
A trajectory is the path something follows when it moves through the air.
Check it out.
The red whale will launch us with this trajectory. The green whale will launch us with this trajectory. And the yellow whale with this trajectory.
Which one will get us to that island? The red whale! Yeah!
Okay, red whale.
Here we come!
Yeah!
It worked!
And so that's a look at our locked animatic. And I do want to roll back really quick to our game view. If you guys remember what we saw in the first board's pass, our camera was much lower and we saw the horizon in the background. And here we lifted our camera higher so that we didn't see much. What was happening, at least for preschoolers, because they saw the line touch the background of the target island, the question is confusing of which one gets you to the island, because this arrow in the original proxy was touching a different island. So it's very important for our demographic to be, they're very literal. So you have to make sure that your visuals match. So then, anyways, so now we have a nice locked animatic. We ship it off to our animation studio, and that's when we start design. I know a lot of other shows start design in different parts of the pipeline, but for us, we like to start it after we've shipped off our animatic. And here I will show you kind of the design process that we went through with Sparkle. You start off with a concept. Here we were like, okay, she needs to be Blaze's little sister. She needs to be, but we don't want her to look too small. And because she's a little sister, what if she's like pink? So this is kind of the first look. I think this looks really scary. So then this is what we did next. Sparkle shrunk down, got much cuter proportions. And now we're playing with a few different things, you know, like she's shorter, her tires are smaller. So she is little, but as you can see in the top portion of the frame, you can see how bouncy she is. So we said, if we're gonna make her smaller, let's make sure that we make her action bigger. So that's something that you keep in mind while designing them, because it also affects how you're gonna rig them later. And then once we kind of got a general sense, a good concept of where we wanted to take this, we go into design where we start getting specific. And you know, here you start to talk about colors, you start to talk about textures. When we were first designing her, we were not only designing her, but we were designing the family. So you'll see down here, scale reference with the family, because when characters are going to be in the same scene for a majority of the episode, you want to make sure you're not making one too small, too big, or you don't want Sparkle and Blaze, if they're going to be in an episode, together the entire time. You don't want their colors to clash. So you're looking at all these things as you're designing them. Remember, this is all made from scratch. So it's one of the incredible things about animation. Everything that you see, somebody thought of. Somebody had to like think of that. You know, the color of her shocks, that was a decision that was made by somebody. If it wasn't me, if it wasn't Jeff, it was somebody along the pipeline. So then once we decide on a design, oh, well, I guess she had a second step. We decided on her body, but we wanted to play around with different hairstyles. So here we have some options, a little inside info for this character. At one point, very, very early in the process, there was talk of maybe getting Jojo Siwa to play Sparkle. So you'll notice in a lot of the designs, we have the bows, because for those of you who know Jojo Siwa, her thing was bows. So we were trying to incorporate that in our early designs. Jojo Siwa did not take the role of Sparkle. So when we decided on the final design, which you'll see in a bit, no bows, we did stars. So once you finalize the design, and again, I know Brendan went over this a little earlier, we go to modeling and surfacing. In modeling, I'll press play. You kind of just get to see how everything is placed on the body, all the insets. For our characters, a lot of the times of what we're looking in modeling is the eyes. Because we're trucks and the face is on the grill area, sometimes the eyes and how far out or how far in could make a character look weird. So that's something that we really pay attention to in the modeling phase. And then once you've approved the model, you go to surfacing, where you really get to see how all the textures that you talked about in design look like on the character. This character's name is Sparkle. She's gonna have a lot of sparkles. And sparkles are hard to pull off on a physical character. Sometimes they could look just noisy rather than actually sparkly. So it's important for us to see it early before saying like, yeah, totally, let's put sparkles all over her body. In her case, we figured out how to make it work, which is awesome, because in research, the kids loved Sparkle and they loved that she sparkled. So thank you, surfacing team, who made our sparkles not be noisy. Okay. All right. And so as we do that with characters, we also do it with our sets. Though usually with our sets, Blaze has been on for a very long time. So we kind of have a lot of already sets that we have in our archives. So we don't go too into depth when it comes to sets. We will do a concept, as you can see here. And then we jump right into surfacing. Once a concept is approved, we jump right ahead, because more likely than not, we've already seen a set like the one we're going to use. So there's no need to get too detailed. And so when they send us a surfacing pass, they just send us clips of what the environment looks like. And these are not fully lit, I will say. There's some light in there, but not. So it's not exactly how it's going to be seen in the final episode, but it's a general sense of, you know, are the textures looking right? Are the rocks in the correct place, etc., etc. And so once that's kind of on the verge of being done, design and previs kind of run on a parallel track too. But design is a little earlier. But then we go into previs. And for me, that's where the fun really starts, because that's when you're translating 2D boards into 3D. And for me, I think everything changes once you're in 3D. You know, like we were talking about for the proxies, like you are in a physical world, you are seeing how the camera works, how things are moving. I actually think I have what are we looking for? Translation from 2D to 3D. Again, biggest one, we're looking for composition. Like I said earlier, so easy to cheat things from 2D in 2D. And then when you're in 3D, you're like, oh, so when we put that trash can right there, it's actually going to be over there in the real set. So then you have to, you know, rework things a little. And then the best part about previs is you start to get to see the camera move. And especially in a show like ours, that's all about action, action, action. That's what our audience loves. Camera work just tells that story so much better. It adds so much energy. And it's really hard to pull off these extravagant camera moves in 2D. So it's great to see it in previs. So we're gonna watch the same clip that you saw for the locked animatic for previs. Oh, and I guess I should say previs is a very, very, very basic part of the pipeline. Everything you see, nothing is going to be rendered. There's no light in here. The shapes are very basic, and you're going to see no expressions from any characters. It's sometimes really funny because someone could be saying a very serious line and they just have no emotion. So previs is great. Previs. Now you really get to see how these characters are moving in that world. This PowerPoint. Okay. And so once we've locked down previs and layout are two very similar parts of the pipeline. So I didn't add layout here, but after previs, you do go to layout, which is a more refined, a little higher quality version of previs, still working out composition, camera movement, and all those more bigger picture things. Once that's locked, you move into proper animation, which for us, we have a blocking pass and an animation pass. First, we'll talk about blocking. And in blocking, you're really focusing on general movement, general posing, intention of expressions. You know, the animation studio wants to show you like, this is what we intend to do. Before we go and do it in terms of acting, let us know if this is in the right direction, if they're hitting the correct poses, if they're giving you the right emotion. These are all things we get to start to see. You'll see some blinks, no lip sync, all very basic movement to show you where these characters could go with their performance. So we'll see a blocking pass. that's what a blocking pass looks like. Just to give you one example of a note we would make, Sparkle looks possessed. She looks so evil here. Like she's about to do something super bad. That for preschool, especially for a character that's your hero, is a big no-no. So definitely one of the notes we gave to our animation studio was, Sparkle's looking evil. Let's make her, let's pull back the evil and push up the excitement. And hopefully we'll see how that looked in animation, where now they have the animation studio knows the direction that we want to go with for acting expressions. So now we're going to see the full-fledged performance, their expression, their eye line, their lip sync. Your eye really starts to need to see the episode with a fine eye to catch, like, is this working? Am I feeling what I need to in this moment? Is the character looking at me? One of the huge things of our show is interaction. And the best way to interact is if you have eye contact. And so eye contact on our show is super, super important. And looking in the center of the frame is something that we always have to ask for, because you could look forward towards camera, but you're not always looking at camera. So that's something we'll always ask our animation studio to do for the purpose of our little audience who we want to come along for the ride. And so this is what it looked like in animation. And so now you see, now we're really seeing the show come together. People are talking, their eyes are moving, their body movements are a lot smoother. Not perfect, but we're getting there. I think for this one, and I'm not sure if you guys are seeing this video in good quality, but on my end, I could tell that the lip sync was a little bit slow. So something that we asked them for was like, make sure the lip sync is syncing correctly, because it looks like it's a few frames late. I need to watch that again. So once they polish the animation pass and they lock it, then we send everything to post-production. Animation is officially over. We've had our say. And there's still a lot to do in post, but we're gonna go pretty quickly through post. So we'll see visual effects happen. The underscore will happen. Sound effects, real sound effects. We use temporary ones in Animatic, but our post-production team adds the real sound effects that aren't copyrighted and are totally okay to use. We have a separate dialogue editor who's really fine editing the dialogue so we don't hear any breaths. So they're reducing any P's that pop, and then making all the levels sound good. But they also send it to mixing, who really, they care about the levels, and they're making sure across the board that the underscore, the sound effects, and the dialogue have the appropriate levels. Because again, especially with a preschool show, there are certain things that you want to highlight. So for example, in the game that we were looking at, we'll probably have like a ding when the arrows are animating on. So it just like, you're trying to direct your focus to the games for this audience, and the mix really helps when you have all the elements at play. And then once it's mixed, our animation studio sends it to quality control. They check that there's no weird things with the broadcast version of the episode. You know, once we had an advisory that one of our scenes was flashing too quickly. So we had to change it because we didn't want to evoke any seizures. And so that's what they'll do. And then finally, that's the last defense. 18 months later, from when Jeff first thought of the story, we have our final delivery, which is always fun because you feel like these things last forever. And then they go into post and they kind of disappear from your life. And then they come back and you're like, whoa, this thing is going on to Nickelodeon at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Great, let me set my DVR. And so, since we've watched all the steps of this game, how could I not show you the final MOV of the game that we've been tracking? And there you have it, a final episode. There's a lot going on there. So now I've talked your ear off. If you have any questions, let's do it. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Jeff and Paulina, thank you so much. This was a beautiful, intricate, exquisite presentation talking through all the facets that go into animation and post-production, from writing to previs, and you really did a phenomenal job of executing or sort of sharing this and putting this all in context for not just our participants, but for myself, for our staff. So we really appreciate you taking the time to deliver this information to us. We do have a lot of really wonderful questions, and I'm conscious that, you know, Shahida's mentioning just how super cool this presentation was, or is rather, how Jennifer is mentioning how she used to watch Team Umizoomi. There are a few really, really great questions that I'd love to share with you. And Aldo's also saying, wow, and how pretty and cute this all is what Shamim was mentioning. So thank you so much for referencing these different steps. One of the first questions I'd love to share is from Isaiah, who actually would like for me to share this question with Jeff on how long does it take for a story to be made to perfection? So Jeff, if you could kindly address that.
Perfection is never an actual, never once we hit perfection. But about 3 months from the moment we first come up with, like, we're working on a new idea today that's like, what if we do a Winter Olympics story? Like, literally my next meeting is, what if we do a story that's like Crusher versus Blaze in a kind of Winter Olympics thing where they're battling it out and like skiing and ice skating and things like that and earning points to win a gold medal. And like, we're starting it today, but it won't be from the time we start it to the time that we like finish the script and hand it off to Paulina. it'll be about 3 months. And if you imagine, people are like surprised by how long it takes sometimes, because then Paulina will have that episode for another about a year after that. So it takes a long time for any one episode to get from just an idea to as perfect as we can make it. So yeah, it's a long time, but we do a lot at once. So we'll start a new idea. We're going to do the Olympics idea today. And next week we'll try we have a story about something else. Like it's going to be like an ambulance story where Blaze becomes an ambulance. So like we're always starting new stories. So our brains start to turn to mush because you forget someone asks you a question about the ambulance story, but wait, I was just doing the Olympics. So there's sort of like an assembly line of like story after story after story after story. So that was a long way of saying 3 months for the writing part.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Diane is asking a question that also speaks to the length of a project, which is that does each episode take 18 months? Is that something that you could address, Paulina?
Yes. So each episode follows the same schedule for the most part. Sometimes we have to give or take a little time here and there, but in general, our episodes, especially because we have that research team, it does take us a little longer than most shows, but 18 months, usual, give or take a few.
Thank you. Firdausi is wondering, is it ever too late to change something if you pass a certain stage?
That's a great question.
Great question. I'll say no. Paulina would say yes. There are times where it is too late, but I will look at things at any point and be like, part of my overall message of like, you have to always be looking at things and saying like, is this working? You might there are stages where yes, it is too late, but like there might be places where you can like, the script is done, but you've started in the animatic and like, you're like, maybe I want to tweak that line, or like, you know what? No one ever said like, hey, these are whales. Like you always find when you see it, you're like, something's missing. Shouldn't one of the characters say, OMG, those look like whales? Like there's always something when you see it up on its feet where you need to make changes. But as the process moves along, the idea is you're supposed to be always having fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer, like smaller and smaller changes, because if you have a note that's a bigger change, the further you get along in the process, the more expensive it gets. And Nickelodeon gives us a nice amount of money to make a cartoon, but not that much money that we can, like, we can't really get to animation and then have me say to Paulina, you know what? Like, I don't think they should be whales. I think this would be much better if they're launching themselves with tiny toy rocket ships. Like, if I have that note too late, someone's going to tell me like, you're stuck with whales. We're using whales. So it's never too late, but the size of the note has to get smaller and smaller as you get closer to the finish line. Paulina, is that about right?
Yes. Just generally speaking, you want to stop making big script changes after the first round of storyboards. You want to stop making really any dialogue changes by the time the animatic is locked. And then in terms of design, you don't want to bleed your designs into the animation process because you need to rig them. So different things fall off at different parts of the pipeline.
Thank you. I'm trying to target all of these wonderful questions, of which there are so many. One of our anonymous viewers asks, why doesn't Sparkle have a driver?
Oh, anonymous. You really had to go for the hard question. This is the question that has bedeviled viewers and parents and message boards. There's always the question of like, why does Blaze have a driver and nobody else? Eventually, we added another truck that Gabby, the mechanic on the show, she drives Watts, but there are basically two humans that they drive trucks, and every other truck drives themselves. This falls under the heading of preschoolers just want to have fun and hear a good story, and they don't care too much about the logic of like, why is that? Like, this really gets back to like, if this were a show for older viewers would be like, this is why, what's going on? Preschoolers are like, I don't know. Like, so we've never actually given kids an answer to that question. And I think the answer is like, they, like most of the trucks can drive themselves. Blaze can drive himself. It's just that Blaze and AJ have this like special best friend friendship that Blaze sort of like gives of himself to AJ, and they kind of work together as a team, because we really want to show kids that fantasy of like, AJ is you. You could be the hero getting to drive. It's like, if you're a little kid, the fantasy of like, I get to drive a monster truck. So we just wanted to, even though it doesn't make sense that Blaze needs a driver or that Sparkle would need a driver, we're just like, Blaze is the only one who really has a driver, because Blaze and AJ are the heroes. And we really wanted a place for like you, the kid, to watching the show, to feel like, that's me. Although it's funny, you think that's me, and then you ask kids if they like, when they play Blaze and the Monster Machines, they play like, I'm Blaze. I'm like, I'm the truck. I'm like, they don't have a problem being like, I'm a truck. Sure. Like, it's all very adult thinking. Anyways, there's no good reason is the answer. We just did it that way because it was fun. And it's like, Sparkle can drive herself. She's really capable.
Thank you. I am conscious that we're running low on time, but I really do want to sneak in a couple more questions before we end our time together. Orchid was asking, and this is such a great question, with new technology and experienced talents, is it easier or harder to work in animation? And then the other part of Orchid's question is such that, is imposter syndrome real in the industry, or is this something that you learn to shake off? I have my own feelings about that, but would love to hear the both of your thoughts.
I'll start with the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It is absolutely 100% real, and the term "fake it till you make it" hits home. For me, I'll give you a quick story. One of the ways I grew, we have these animation meetings, and the other creator, Ellen, couldn't make it, and so she said, I hope you got this. So I had to really say like, okay, I know exactly what Ellen would want me to say in a scenario that I'd never expected that I was going to be there. So I was like, who am I to tell this animation director what we want? I'm like a production coordinator in New York. He's a bigwig in Vancouver. So there is a lot of that. As you continue growing and you start really feeling comfortable with what you're doing, it definitely goes away. But then it also comes back every now and then, and you're like, wait, what? Am I really, is this what I'm doing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this okay? Does anybody care? Am I doing it wrong? It's real. It happens. And I think it's just a part of life. It's a part of the job, especially in the entertainment industry where it's like fast moving. I've been so lucky that this show has lasted as long as it has. But on my next gig, I'm going to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know Blaze. I hope I know this next thing.
Yeah, that's it. It never goes. Imposter syndrome is real, and it never goes away. Like, I'm supposed to be the showrunner of this show. I mean, I am the showrunner. I'm not supposed to be. I am. and there all the time things come up where like, and this sort of actually dovetails back to the technology question, where people are talking about like the specs for delivery or like something like very technical in the show. And like, I always wonder, should I act like I know what they're talking about, or should I just kind of nod my head? But like, I don't know what they mean, and I've never done that. And I just sort of know these words, but I don't fully get it. It never goes away. There's always something that someone else is an expert in that you don't know about. And you just have to kind of fake it till you make it. And also just trust in the quality of what you know and what you're good at. And don't be embarrassed about saying, hey, like, I think I understand the gist of what you're talking about, but I don't totally get it. So like, just speaking, like instead of trying to like cover it up, just be honest when there's something that seems important and you're not sure that you know all the things you need to know. Don't act like you're not worthy of the thing you're doing because you don't know everything. I've been the head writer on a bunch of preschool shows, but I was always in charge of the writing. And then one day Nickelodeon said, "You've got your own show." here's your millions of dollars to make it, and make decisions about all these things that I've never done before. And like, I would go to records with these professional actors and directors and things, and I would sit in the record thinking like, I can't give that guy a note. Like, he's a famous actor. She's incredible. She's like, and it get odd, like, they're going to know that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I've never sat in this chair before. And like, people will try you. They'll want to be like, see if you know what you're talking about. Like, all right, you won't have to listen to him. And you just have to like react and kind of be like, it's okay that I don't know what I'm talking about. And you can say, hey, I probably don't know what I'm talking about, but I know that I want something to be a certain way. Help me. You know, you can just be honest about, I don't know this, but I know I want this thing to work like that. What could we do? And I think that honesty, it gets you a lot further than trying to pretend that you know something that you don't. But it never goes away. There's always people that know stuff that you don't, and you just kind of got to be cool with it.
Roll with the punches.
And I guess, I don't know if that helped with the tech. There was the technology part of the question. Paulina, I'm going to throw that to you because the technology is always changing. And I feel like I am always falling further and further behind in terms of like, what are they talking about? These kids are coming out of school and they know how to do so much. And like, all I know how to do is just like type. Like, so I don't know, but I think there's more. Yeah.
What was the exact question? Read technology.
Oh, we just you know, what some recommendations you might have in terms of technology and how it cover this, because I'm conscious we need to close quite soon. But just sort of with the ever-changing technologies, you know, how does that enhance your learning and entering the industry? How might it expedite?
Yeah, I guess I'll say like, even just like the pandemic gave us all a look at technology a little harder, but in some ways it made, you know, technology made it easier to reach out to people. In some ways it made it harder. You know, it's easier to make plans with somebody online, but it also feels more formal. So I think with technology, there's both good and evil that come with it.
And I would say, for me, I would say always be critical of yourself and always be wondering, like, is there more I could be learning? Like, technology is changing. And if you become someone who's like, well, I learned this and that's what I know, and the world is changing and I've missed it, like, you will start to fall behind. Like, technology is going to change. So when you're in this industry, you do have to like try to keep up and ask the questions of what new things, skills are my peers learning? Like right now, more and more animation studios are moving towards like game engine renders, like, which is a whole other way of like, where they do video games where things are like rendering really quickly, and like it could make things cheaper. They can make shows faster. Again, I don't totally understand it, but I've seen it demonstrated, and I know enough to know like, okay, this is a place where things are headed. Don't close myself off to it. Try to understand as best I can and try to be aware of like what's new and what's coming. And if you can be someone who's always learning and adapting, like there's always going to be a place for you. And if you sort of dig your heels in and say, why do this? Then the world of animation is going to pass you by, and the amount of projects you can work on is just going to get smaller and smaller. So adapt.
Thank you both so much. These words of wisdom are so exceptional, and you're, as one of our colleagues at TAP says, you're quite the dynamic duo. We wish we had another hour or 2 or 3 with you, because very easily we could spend so much more time with you. You're full of inspiring suggestions to our participants, and we hope to bring you back soon if there are no objections.
I don't object. I think, Paulina, I won't speak for you, but I think we love talking about what we do. We do love it. Like, the world is a crazy place, and like to feel like you're getting to put something good out there in the world. Like, I don't know how many preschoolers are walking away with learning trajectory, but we're like, even if they just get introduced to trajectory through the story we came up with, then it might be something when they go to school, they might be like, I know about that. Like, I think science is cool. Like, that's just a good feeling to know that you're putting in all this creative hard work into something that might actually put some good into the world. And that's just cool. So Paulina and I love talking about it. We would be happy to like try to turn more people out there into people that want to do this for a living. So yes, if you want more of us, we're around.
Yeah. And I believe you guys got our LinkedIns, and I know I'm active-ish. If I see a message, I will try to respond as much as I can. So please feel free to find me on there and reach out. I could talk a lot more about my experience, about the 3D pipeline. There's so much. So if you're curious, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Jeff. Please reach out to the lovely Paulina and Jeff. I want to acknowledge that so many of your questions went unanswered, but that we hope to address them in our next time together. So thank you all so much. And I will now pass the baton on to the lovely Lyndon and the equally lovely Natasha. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Paulina, for that amazing presentation, taking away so much from what you offered today. Just your enthusiasm and passion. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Paulina and Jeff. We really, really appreciate it. And again, we'd always welcome you back to our group anytime.
Absolutely.
We will come back. You want us? We're around.
Definitely.
Yay.
I second that. I second that.
Awesome. So we do have to come to a close today. And as we said, we always open together and we always close together. So in the beginning of this group, we talked about what makes us creative, and we're going to now put it into our bodies. So for our closing, we are going to strike a pose that embodies your unique creative self. And Lyndon and I are going to do this on the count of 3. And even though we can't see you all, we trust that you're all going to do it with us at home. So are you ready, Lyndon?
I'm ready.
All right. So on 3, 1, 2, 3. And shake it off. Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here with us.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to today's mega group. We are so excited to share this space with you next week. I hope you have a great afternoon, and as always, stay connected. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.